Sego. My name is Martin Bertrand. I am a educational counselor for the First Nations Education Council. I am going to present today two techniques for stress management.
The two techniques that I'm going to present today are coherent breathing and a technique that comes from the ACT method. Both techniques have shown good results for stress management. I want this presentation to be as practical as possible. That's why I wanted to have two techniques that are simple and adaptable to any situations. You can then add these two techniques to the toolkit that you already have for stress management. Now, I won't go too deep into theory, so I will present a little bit what stress is, but only so that it can be applied to these techniques. The first technique was presented by Stephen Elliott in The New Science of Breath. However, the fact of having a certain control over respiration, over breath, to be able to control the mind is not new. It comes actually from yoga, which presented this technique millennia ago. However, Stephen Elliott put a certain aura of science around the technique and shown why it's useful and what it does to the body. The technique per se is very simple. It's only having 6 breath cycles per minute every 5 minutes. So this means the same thing as 5 seconds to inhale and 5 seconds to exhale, as you can see on the screen right now. So there, you inhale, and there, you exhale. And this for 5 minutes. Ideally, you would be doing this 3 times a day. The idea is to stay focused so you don't do your dishes in the same time. It's really to have the mind focused at the same time that you are inhaling and exhaling for 5 seconds for 5 minutes. More than that doesn't bring you more good effects. The tip that can be brought to you is to do this before each meal, so that you would have a kind of incentive to do this 3 times a day. I myself do this when I wake up and when I go to sleep. It actually helps you sleep better or go faster into sleep. I just have to find one more time during the day to be able to perform the technique. To understand how this works, you have to understand how the autonomic nervous system works, at least for 2 of its parts, which are the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. We'll let aside the sympathetic nervous system, which has no impact on what we're doing right now. So the sympathetic nervous system is the system that you use when you have a fight or flee situation. It will mobilize adrenaline into your system, then you will get accelerated heartbeat and breath, elevated tension, contraction of the blood vessel, and the blood will be directed to the muscle for you to be able to fight or flee in the situation that you live in. Of course, the digestive system will slow down because you don't necessarily need the energy to go there at that moment. As you can see, stress or the use of the sympathetic nervous system is not bad per se. It actually helps you in bad situations. Back in the days when a mammoth was charging you, you had to have this adrenaline and have this elevated tension and to be able to have the blood directed to the muscle and be very focused on the situation so that you could actually flee from the mammoth charging. Even today, if a car is going towards you at a very fast pace, you need to be able to mobilize this tension into the body to be able to get away from the car's direction to be able to to be able to, well, stay alive. The problem would be when the sympathetic nervous system is mobilized for a certain period of time. So let's say that you are told you will lose your job, for example. The You could have the sympathetic nervous system mobilized for, like, I would say, a week, a month, 2 months, a year. So this is the fact for this sympathetic nervous system, which is mostly a fight or flee situation. The, when it's useful, actually puts your body at risk, and of course your mind. That's where the parasympathetic nervous system comes in. The parasympathetic nervous system is almost the exact counterpart of the sympathetic nervous system and is responsible for the rest state. This is the system that will make your heart slow down. So we call this a cardio moderator. It will augment the digestive secretion, so help your transit, help you have an optimal intestinal transit, actually. So the fact of stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system will actually help you cope with stress and its effects on your body. One of the ways that you could do this is through coherent breathing. So just the mere fact of staying focused for 5 minutes and inhaling for 5 seconds and exhaling for 5 seconds without holding your breath in between. This has a direct effect on the variability of the heart rate. The variability of the heart rate measures the fluctuations in the interval of time separating two cardiac contractions. So 2 times the heart will go boom. So the space of time in between is in a state of anxiety. So it would look like the first curve that you have here, the red one. So you see that there are peaks, and the heart at that moment is not coherent. The fact of just staying focused, inhaling for 5 seconds and exhaling for 5 seconds will put the heart in a state of coherence, as you can see in the second curve, the one that is blue here. So just doing this will induce a state of heart coherence. So just the fact of inhaling for 5 seconds, exhaling for 5 seconds, staying focused will help you get a curve that will look like the one below. It's easily measured, actually. You just have to have a heart rate variability monitor and a sensor that you would put on your finger or your earlobe that will measure your heart contractions and calculate the interval. So this is very easy to monitor, and we can see the effect, the direct effect it has on the body. So how does it work, pretty much? Well, it stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. It's pretty much a training of this system to be able to enter into effect when it's needed. The same way that if you breathe very fast, you will induce an effect of agitation in the body. The mere fact of slowing down the breath and controlling it will induce a state of calm. The constant practice will bring a training to stay calm, stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system at the expense of the sympathetic system. Of course, stress is useful in life or death situations. However, long periods of stress can be harmful to the body and the mind. So this is a technique to lower the stress into the body and the mind, which work together. There are different apps out there to help you support coherent breathing. This one is free and it's called the Breathing app, and it's available on both the Android systems and the iOS systems. So if you have an iPod, or if you have an an iPhone, or if you have an Android phone or a tablet, you can actually just download it, and it's free. It will help you achieve coherent breathing. The second one is a bit more complex, the second technique, and comes from the ACT method, which stands for Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. It's been presented by Dr. Russ Harris, who put the technique into his book, The Happiness Trap, that presents the ACT method, which is a way to work with emotions instead of denying them, or making sure that emotions don't overwhelm the individual. To understand how emotions work, like stress, for example, imagine that you are sailing on a ship far away at sea. Beneath the deck, out of sight, hides a vast horde of demons with enormous claws and sharp teeth. And they made a deal with you. As long as you keep the ship aimlessly drifting at sea, they will stay under the bridge, so you won't have to watch them. But if you ever head to shore, they'll immediately rush to the deck, flap their wings, string their fangs, and threaten to tear you to shreds. Unsurprisingly, you don't like this very much. So you say, "Sorry, demons, I didn't mean it. Please go back down," and you turn around and drift towards the high sea again. And the demons disappear under the bridge. So you sigh in relief, and everything seems to be going well. The problem is that you are quickly fed up with aimlessly drifting. You are bored. You feel lonely, miserable, resentful, and worried. You see all these other ships going to shore, and you know you really want to go too. So one day, you take your courage, you turn the bar, and you head again to the shore. But the moment you do, these demons swarm on deck and threaten to tear you apart again. But here's the interesting thing. Although these demons are very good at threatening you, they never cause you any physical harm. Why not? Because they can't. All they can do is growl loudly, wave their claws, and look terrifying. Physically, they can't even touch you. The only power they have is the ability to intimidate. So if you think they're really going to do what they say, then they're in control of the boat. But once you realize that they no longer have the capacity to hurt you physically, you are free. You can take your ship wherever you want as long as you accept the presence of demons. All you have to do is to reach land is to let the demons gather, let them cry out after you, and continue to steer the ship to shore. Demons can howl and protest, but they can't stop you. The demons here represent mental restlessness in their different forms, the immediate causes of stress, the fears that paralyze us, the horror stories we tell ourselves, the judgments we make about ourselves. Now let's experience something. Imagine yourself holding a lemon. See its color, its shape, feel its porosity. See yourself cutting it in half, in 4 parts. Feel the knife enter the lemon as you're at your fingertips. Now take a big bite of the lemon. It is so bitter, it is juicy. Now come back to yourself. Are you salivating right now? The reason is, the brain doesn't make a big difference between what we experiment in our mind and what we experiment in real life. In this experiment, you are salivating because your mind interprets the image of the lemon in your mind as if there was a real lemon in your presence, and that you actually took a big bite. Now let's think of stress. If a mammoth was actually charging you, you would live a useful stress, because your life would actually be threatened. So you will need all your energy, all the energy in your body to go to systems that would help you, that will assist you in fleeing as fast as you can. So you actually need adrenaline. You need your heart to pump as fast as it can, and you need all the blood to go to your muscles to be able to deal with this fight or flee situation. But if you are dealing with divorce or unemployment, and that your brain is interpreting this situation as life-threatening, your body is going to mobilize a lot of energy on certain systems at the expense of others, which could be useful for your daily life. For example, digestion, reflection, etc. So that's why it's important to deal with the emotions that you're living, the perceptions that you may have, and the thoughts that are happening right now in your head in a period of stress, so that it doesn't affect you and it's not interpreted by the brain as a life-threatening situation. Or at least it takes a little bit less hold on you. So let's start by making some distinctions. The first one is the thoughts are only words in your head. Images are also images that you have in your head, and sensations are feelings inside the body. But none of this is actually you. These are only things happening to you at a certain moment. They come to you and they go. The usual way of dealing with emotions is actually a vicious circle that is illustrated by The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris. First, you have an emotion that you have to deal with. So being stressed out, being sad, being angry, being hurt, feeling shame, for example. So you try to escape them by retreating to your happy place and actually not dealing with the emotion, but trying to cope with it by doing something else, by distracting yourself from the emotion. Then your happy place is built from temporary and sometimes toxic things. We can think of drugs, alcohol, overeating, oversleeping, watching TV, gambling, yelling at people. Any of these things is not strong enough to deal with the emotions eternally. At some point, they will come back. And the usual reflex is to take more of the bad habit and to indulge into it, coming back into the beginning of the vicious circle and restarting the process over and over and over again. The first step that you need to undertake to be able to deal with the emotions is not to distract yourself from them. It is to retract yourself from the state of fusion that you have with the emotion. To defuse with them means to recognize that they are there, but they are not you. Basically, thoughts are just sounds, words, stories. Thoughts may or may not be true. We don't automatically believe in them. Thoughts may or may not be important. We only pay attention to them if they are useful. Thoughts are certainly not orders. We certainly do not have to obey thoughts. Thoughts may or may not be wise. We do not automatically follow their advice. Thoughts are never threats. Even the most painful or disturbing thoughts do not pose any threat to us. One way to disengage from the internal speech advocated by Harris is simply to be observer, by presenting an expression of detachment. To begin this exercise, first remember an overwhelming thought which takes the form of I am something. For example, I am not good enough, or I am incompetent. Preferably choose a thought that comes up often and that usually bothers you or makes you feel bad. Now focus on this thought and believe it as much as you can for 10 seconds. Then take this thought and in front of it, insert the sentence, I have this thought, and insert the thought. Play that thought again, but this time with the sentence attached. Think of yourself as, I am thinking I am this thought. For example, I am thinking I am not good enough. Notice what's going on. Do it again, but this time the sentence is a little longer. I notice that I am thinking about this thought. For example, I notice that I am thinking about the fact that I'm not good enough. Think of yourself. I notice that I am this. Notice what's going on. Remember, you can't learn to ride a bicycle just by reading about it. You really have to get into it. Practice makes perfect. The second step to the virtuous circle, this time, is breathing and observing. This is where the coherent breathing can come useful at this moment. The idea is to breathe into the emotion, the feeling, the thought. This is where we may connect to breathing coherence, as I said. So, the strategy here to avoid is avoidance, of course, judgment, and amplification. In other words, see the thought, see the emotion, see the feeling as it is. No more, no less. You've diffused from it. Now, just look at it. Really breathe into this. The third step is just making space. So pinpoint the thought, the emotion, the feeling in your body. Where is it located? How big is it? Does it have a texture? Then, when you've located the thought, when you have a certain idea of how big the thought is, the texture, the feeling that comes with it, that you observe, and do not fuse with it again, what you would need to do is make space around it. And your breath is actually important here. The breath is there also to help you make some space around it. Avoidance strategies will not work here. So, the thought exists, the emotion exists, the feelings exist. It is there. Denying it's there will not help. But now it's not suffocating you. You are the observer, you are breathing right now, and the emotion, the thought, and the feeling is there, and has a space to exist. It's not as alarming or as distracting or as threatening anymore. The fourth step is just allowing. Creating a resistance between you, the feeling, the emotion, the thought, will not make it go away. Allowing is just a means to have the emotion, the feeling, the thought, losing their grips on yourself. This is also called letting go. It's the fact of not opposing resistance to what is, allowing it to be, dealing with it if need be, understanding the message it has for us, but not letting it spoil our existence.